Welcome to the Healing Lab. I'm your host, Brian Bourgeois. So glad to have you. And we are so excited to have Nora Oliver, who is a neuroscience specialist focusing on neuroscience, somatic work, cognitive behavioral therapy, and meditation. She offers coaching programs and is a certified cognitive behavioral therapist. Nora, thanks for coming on the Healing Lab.
Thanks for having me, Brian. It's so good to be here.
Awesome. So tell us, how did you get into the healing neuroscience space, and how long have you been doing that?
Yeah, so I received my certification in 2025, and I have, the reason really I got into the mental health space is I'd have to say I was in a domestic violence space, my kids and I. And one way to really heal and get out of the funky life that we were living within the abuse was to really try and understand, how can I get out of this mental space that we were struggling with, the abuse. And so I started taking courses and programs, and I thought I need to understand the brain so that we can heal from all the trauma. And I needed to understand it for myself, but also so that I can guide my 3 kids how to heal, because trauma stays in our body for a very long time, if not processed, if not healed. And that is one area that people struggle with tremendously. It is not so easy to, let's say, have a traumatic event, but that trauma is not just an event. It's something that happens to you post the event, right? The way you process that information to what happened to you. And that's something that I was struggling with during my domestic violence situation and leaving that space. And so studying neuroscience has really brought in so much knowledge and understanding as to how the body works, how the brain works, how the two are connected, and how the stomach is connected to all of it, right? How we hold emotions, how we process emotions and thoughts, and how everything is linked together. So I've been able to understand it, and which is what led me to also become a clinical mental health counselor and school counselor, so that I can better understand even further my studies within not just adults, but all different age gaps, that I feel like there's just so much that we need to understand more in our society, in our world. And there's some lacking research as well that I'm trying to kind of figure out how to get to those details so that we understand even further why we behave certain ways.
Wow, yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah, it's so underestimated how much an impact trauma can have, and a lot of people have trauma and they don't even know where it came from. There's ancestral trauma, there's like all kinds of stuff that, if you don't know how to process it, yeah, you're right, it's can cause a lot of undesirable situations eventually, and surface some way or another. So for neuroscience aspect with your clients, how do you approach that? So you focus on the nervous system, and do you recommend or focus on like supplements that can kind of regulate the nervous system? Or how do you approach the neuroscience aspect with people that come to you and say, hey, I'm a big mess, like I'm having all these issues, and I'm anxious all the time, or depressed, or just not focused, or what would be your process to kind of start helping those people out?
There's so many directions to go about it, but I always say that if you can, do a complete life assessment. Basically meaning look at all aspects of your life and try and get away from that narrow focus, right? Because most people with trauma they are so fearful that their whole life will be, in trauma. They'll live into that space. So they try so hard to predict the future, right? Know exactly what's going to happen, know exactly what job I will have, know exactly I'm going to be safe, I'm going to be okay financially. And there's so many aspects of it where sometimes in the end it really holds us back and we forget to be in the moment and live in the now. But also we're activating or overactivating our brain, our nervous system, to always be on the run, always be on high alert, always be on, like they're being attacked. And so it really throws off your nervous systems. But and I have to say that everybody processes trauma very differently. So you can have two siblings living within the same abuse system, and one may process it differently than the other. So one may feel more pain and prolonged throughout their entire life, and the other one may be processing the information a bit better and be more okay. So, if you have a child that may end up in substance use, for example, that could be a reason as to, something has been going on, because individuals don't just end up using substances, right? Or abusing others, or have any other medical, mental difficulties in life. So I always say, start by doing a complete life assessment. And I come up with a whole program that I will be releasing very soon for individuals to just download the document and do a life assessment yourself, right? You don't have to pay a crazy amount of money to get that done. But the thing is, I haven't found one source that does that for you, where it looks like your nutrition,
Hmm.
how well are you living, looks at your water intake, the water quality, looks at how well you're eating, right? And what your body needs. Are you having any particular cravings? Because that says a lot about you and your body, what it needs, right? When you're having a craving, it's telling you, I am lacking this, right? Some people crave sugar, salts, and so forth, right? So you have to pay attention to that. How's your sleep? What kind of thoughts are you having on a regular basis? Um, what triggers you? What annoys you? There's so much. And then how do you feel fulfilled in life? What are your financial goals or dreams, or what is your living situation? What are your relationships like, romantically, with yourself, with your family, with your friends? What kind of hobbies do you have? It goes into really big depth within your life to kind of see where you stand, where you're lacking. What's your mental health like? What are your emotions like on your day-to-day basis? Um, how are you easily triggered or not triggered emotionally? Do you have any mental addictions? And it goes, that document goes into very deep details, but it gives you a really clear picture as to, who you really are and how you got here. So my goal is always to not only understand that we have a problem in life, it's more so, where is it coming from, what triggered it, why did you get here, and how did you get here. And then of course the next step after that is to solve and figure out ways to, one, heal, to learn how to process emotions and regulate your nervous system, and of course go into tools that one can learn to really take care of themselves, so that you don't always need therapy, you don't always need a life coach or a medical provider, or you're fully understanding your body, your mind, how everything works, so that you can function on your own. So I feel like there's tools out there, but it's in little bits of pieces here and there, and you have to go to so many specialists to do one thing that you really need. And I haven't found one provider that does it all. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish here, is that if somebody can give themselves a full life assessment, I feel like where to start in life, the area that you lack the least. So talking about the nervous system, that's a really big part. Um, that area, nervous system can be thrown off really easily. So if you find yourself constantly having negative thoughts, let's say how you're viewed by others, or if you end up, I think one clear way to find out if your nervous system is really unregulated is, let's say you go to work and you're just so miserable all the time. You go to school and you're so miserable all the time. You shouldn't feel miserable in those spaces, right? Because when you think about it, you chose to work there. You chose to go to school and study. You chose to live in a particular position, be around certain people, right? We have choices, but a lot of times we feel like we don't have the choices, right? Because we usually pick based on what's expected of us and based on what others might be telling us to do. So, there's just so much that we really need to open our mind into thinking, how am I living? How am I thinking? Who am I surrounded by? Who's bringing me down? Who's really helping me achieve the life that you really, really want? So there's just so much I can get into um, in depth with and give people clarification as to, if you're behaving or feeling a particular way and you don't want to feel that way, that's because something somewhere at some point in your life, and usually it starts from when you were very little, the subconscious programming, it's been programmed in a particular way because of how you were raised by mom, dad, other caregivers, and then that becomes your subconscious programming, which is your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts, your the pain patterns. All of that is programmed from when you were born to usually around 8 years old and so forth, right? Um, so yeah, that's a very long answer.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I've never heard of that full assessment kind of diagnosis. I don't know if we'd call it diagnosis, but evaluation of, everything. And kind of, it's sort of like an x-ray into how you can identify different areas that, you know, may be worth looking at or diving deep into or whatnot. But yeah, that's really interesting. And I would just say, like, no matter who you are, like there's always something that can be improved, and nobody's. I don't think I've ever met one person that never experienced trauma in their life. It's kind of inevitable. So
Yeah, no, exactly. We all go through different experiences in life, and we all process those experiences differently, and we feel pain differently, and that's okay. But we get to choose whether we're okay with that way of living or if we want to change and feel in a particular way. We get to choose and then do something about it.
so going back to practical neuroscience, like I don't therapies. I don't know what you'd say, therapies or just protocols. Um, so you got, like I was touching on, do you got supplements that maybe could help? And that, I don't know, you can, um, let us know like what your thoughts on this, but there's supplements like breath work, the somatic work that you do, or kind of like the mind body yoga, um, kind
Mhm.
of thing, meditation.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
what is, do you have like do you kind of go through all those with your clients, or what's the progression there?
Yes. It depends where the client is because, not all work well for everybody. So I found what works the most is meditation, but not meditation where you repeat affirmations to yourself. But I mean meditations where you actually, it's done through frequency sounds. I don't know if you've heard of
Hmm.
frequencies, but everything in our planet is made of frequencies. When you think about it, even our thoughts, right? We are made of frequencies. And I'm not going to go too in depth about this, but if you want to understand the brain a little bit more, you can, maybe do some research on pineal gland and how it functions. The pineal gland is a part of the brain which is right on the back of our brain, but it's like in the front of our throat, but in the back. It's actually connected to the spine. So the reason why some deep breathing works so well is because when you and there's very some particular breathing that you can do to activate and get the oxygen into the pineal gland. So if you breathe with your stomach, right? You take a deep breath. That means the oxygen, right? You're filling up your belly, but then the oxygen is your spine basically is moving up, and it's activating the back of your where the pineal gland is, right? And it's like this fluid that moves up the spine to activate it. And usually, for most people, we struggle with regulating our breathing. And that means our pineal gland just sits there. It doesn't function the way we want it to function. Actually, what's very interesting is you can kind of, there's a lot of studies that have been done with the pineal gland and the ancient history. If you look at the Egyptian history, for example, I don't know if you've seen that eye. So the pineal gland kind of looks like an eye, and it is tied. So basically, the ancient history already knew a lot about the pineal gland and manifesting and meditating and breath work so long ago that I feel like now we are in 2026. We are just learning or starting to understand it a lot more than what was already understood a long time ago. So the pineal gland has a lot to do with the way we function as an individual with a nervous system. So that's why breathing breath work works so well, because if you're doing it properly, it activates the pineal gland, which is what you want, which is the frequency within you, right? Which is what attracts what you want in life and what you deserve or need, or however you want to call it. Um, so breathing, but my favorite is frequency sounds meditation. Basically, a lot of my clients, depending where you are, some have gone through some extensive trauma. So, you really have to be trauma informed, even though I'm trauma informed, and certified in it as well. I'm careful with somebody that's gone through some extreme trauma, because closing their eyes can even be too a trigger, right? It's too scary. So you have to start in the process and meet a client wherever they're at in their world. So my favorite is frequencies. Like basically, you're shutting down your brain and you're activating your nervous system to calm down. So there's this thing called brain waves. I'm going to get more in depth in that, right? We all have brain waves, different frequency brain waves. So there is beta and then alpha. A lot of people live in the beta brain waves, which is the always super activated or overthinking, overanalyzing process. So you can't be calm and make decisions when your brain is going crazy. You know that spiral piece of paper in the brain that images you see. You don't want your brain going in so many directions, completely lost, confused, and tied. What you want is a normal, regulated, calm brain, right? You can actually manifest and meditate and regulate your nervous system when you calm down your brain waves. And the best way is through frequencies. Best way is to shutting your brain off. Even for 1 minute, I tell my clients, if you can just go to the car or the bathroom break during work, just to regulate your nervous system, just shut your eyes off and have no sound, no talk, nothing at all, and just go into this deep meditation mode, even for just that 1 minute. The thing is, when you close your eyes, you forget all the material world, right? All your senses, like basically shutting off your senses. Besides, unless you hear sounds, then that's something that you have to make sure it's off. But the best way to meditate is by shutting off your senses, closing your eyes. You're not hearing anything. You're not tasting, smelling nothing. Um, so when you close your eyes and you're listening to different frequency sounds, you actually get into this moment where you feel like there's no time, it's no space. It just does not exist. A lot of my clients, we try and get there with our eyes closed first, because there's too much distraction with our eyes open. So if we can practice and master with our eyes closed, then at some point we get comfortable and in doing that with our eyes open. What we really want to get to is to manifest and meditate and regulate our nervous system with our eyes open, but that takes a little while, especially for a nervous system that's been overactivated for a very long time. But this works tremendously. A lot of my clients report saying that they feel calm, at peace, even though they came in feeling like their whole world had crashed and everything is going wrong. And only after, let's say, 10, 15 minutes max, they feel like a different person. They feel like they went somewhere else. And I'm doing nothing. I'm not touching them. I'm not putting anything on their bodies. All they're doing is sitting on a chair and closing their eyes. They'll listen to frequency sounds, and I'm guiding them how to get into that state where they feel at peace. And they wake up with their nervous system regulated. And then I send them home with homework to how to practice this 1 to 2 minutes a day on their own, because the goal is to master it on your own, so you don't need anyone else to guide you, and you don't want to waste money also when you could be doing something more productive. So that is always my goal, is to give as many tools as possible so that you can go on your own. You can guide your kids or parents or anyone else out there that may need your support, may need these services. Um, so again, that's a very long answer. There's just so much I could say about the nervous system, the brain waves, and the way our body is connected and how it functions. There's just too much to say in a short time.
Yeah, no, that's really insightful. Like, so for the, is that the same, the nerve you're talking, the, what is it called? What kind of, the,
Nervous
no,
system,
no,
or
the
oh, the pineal
pineal
gland.
gland. Is that the same
Yeah,
as
so
the vagus nerve?
it's connected, yes. Yeah. So your whole nervous system is connected. When you look at, I don't have an image to show you now, but when you look at an image of your nervous system, it is all connected, right? It's all these signals. Like when you look at frequencies, for example, they're all sending signals everywhere, right? The nervous system is connected to the brain, right? You have a thought, and then you have a thought up here, and then it sends a signal to your body, right? And that's your nervous system. So then if it's a thought about, oh my god, my finger hurts, you're going to feel the pain there. Or I don't know, or I need to look at my nails, I don't know, whatever thought you may be having, you're going to feel it in those specific areas. And that's why there's also studies done with placebo effects too. I don't know if you've looked at those that research studies, but that has a lot to do with our brain,
Mm-hmm.
right? And pain. So that's what I mean by, the more your nervous system is regulated, the more you can heal your body yourself, right? Without having to take medication or supplements. I'm not big in medications and supplements. I'm more so natural. Like I feel like our body has so much that it can do on its own. We just need to activate the right parts that it needs to do the job for. And if it's been turned off for so long, then you may see it as, as issues in your health. Um, but that's just, honestly, I really wish everyone would go and get their neuroscience certification, mental health, master's degrees, and, certifications in nutrition, because these are such big values that we should be learning in our lives, and not just always rely on others to help us. And so, yeah.
Wow, yeah. So when you're working with clients, they're going through stuff. What is there, you look at kind of like their daily habits, and what is the like most common theme that you kind of run across of say, okay, we need to change this, whether it's like, getting your routine for going to sleep, your routine for like getting up in the morning or throughout the day. Is there any kind of, overarching kind of theme that you've run across, and like how to,
Yeah, I would say
what worked for the people?
yes, I think we are overactivating our brain and nervous system by feeling that we have to accomplish so much in life and in such a short term. Because when you think about it, our world has changed a lot from when we were kids, and a lot more is expected. And especially with technology these days, I feel like even though the news travels so quickly, but then you're also expected to know a lot more. So we are really struggling to really realize what we really want in life. And I feel like we're losing self control and self confidence very frequently. Those two are really big. It's two that I find in every single client. Um, we're afraid to listen to ourselves, what we want, but we're also like, the society expects so much from us, right? The expectations. You need to be a mom, a good mom, and if you're not, then you're not a good person. If your kid doesn't get their teeth cleaned, you're a bad person. Or I'm using the mom version as an example. But if you don't have a job, then something must be wrong with you, right? That stigma of and like, there's different parts of our world that we struggle with in day to day. Um, but there's very few, there's not a few, but there's quite a lot in common I find between all my clients when it comes to um, them struggling in life. And I can't say that they're related to them anything being wrong with them. It's just the way they're processing information, the way they're feeling, right? Those thoughts, right? Because to tell you the truth, our brain does not know the difference between you making up a story than what actually happened. It still triggers the same nervous system, the same feeling, same activation, right? So that's something that we have to be very careful about, right? So if somebody had a trauma from the past, they may be reactivating the same trauma just by a thought itself. So this is where I mean, but we need to really learn tools how to regulate ourselves, our brain, and our nervous system so that, you know, we don't end up with further issues in life. Because when you think about it, and you can look up the studies, I don't have it in front of me, but I can send them to you. There are studies that have been completed that if you live in a state of trauma or prolonged overactivation of the nervous system, we already know that triggers what different illnesses, diseases, and viruses. So a person may be getting sick more frequently than others, and that could be an overactivation of the nervous system and the thought process and how you're actually processing all the information that's happening to you. And a lot of times things are not even happening to you, you're just having it in your thought process, and it's triggering your nervous system, and that your body cannot handle what it needs to do to cleanse your body and to process and keeping you healthy. And then of course you have to think about what are you putting in your body, right? When I get really grossed out when I go grocery shopping these days because it's so disappointing with what I find there. You know, a grocery store is full of food, but there's very few healthy foods. And the ones I find that are healthy are extensively expensive. So how is one supposed to live off, one, healthy, but two, how can they afford the healthy food? So we get stuck on highly processed foods, which is a really big trigger of our nervous system as well, which disrupts your sleep. But then we think about the water quality as well. Do you even think about where your water is coming from? How is it processed before it comes to you? And then what it does to your body after you receive that water. So and you have to think about what percent of your body is made out of water too, because that's really big. A majority of our body, especially for kids, it's actually higher. So if you're not drinking good quality water, you're really not doing good. And I think that's probably the simplest thing to fix, the water, more so the food than the food, because the water, you can get different filters to clear it out, but you have to be careful too because there's a lot of osmosis cleansing products, and you're cleansing the water, you're removing all the bad, but then if it's sitting there for so long, it turns into mold and it starts producing other things that you do not want to be drinking. So you really have to educate yourself in all of this because there's so much that goes into our body when it comes to living healthy and thinking healthy.
Yes. No, that's great. That's great. So I have to ask you maybe a controversial question, but so with trauma and your clients with trauma, there's been a lot of research that has recently been published by some pretty prominent universities regarding psychedelics, specifically psilocybin. There's also ayahuasca, which has kind of been said to like kind of reset you know, your whole paradigm of how you view your life. Um, do you have any experience with any of those, or with your clients have done that, or any? What are your thoughts on that as far as using those medicines for healing, for nervous system regulation, for getting a different perspective on how you view the world and view yourself, reactivating like parts of the brain that have been dormant and just completely in, just not functional because of, neurotransmitters are just like getting blocked all across the board. Whereas when you like have
Mhm.
some like a psilocybin, for example, it activates 99.9% of your neurotransmitters in your brain, which is proven now, which is very recent. This is actually just some very like prominent articles from prominent universities have recently come out, and it's basically, and you can even Google this. People can Google it on YouTube or whatever. They can look at all this stuff up. But I mean, now
Mhm.
the changing factor is that they've scientifically proven that this, like for example, like a psilocybin treatment can actually be beneficial, and this is the actual thing that it does with the brain, because they're doing brain scans on all of this stuff. And you know what do you think about all that?
That's such a big, heavy conversation to be had. And this is actually fairly new in the mental health space. And many facilities are still kind of testing it. Um, and some try to abuse it. Some individuals try and abuse it because it's another way to get into the substance space, and it's usually covered by insurance, depending on the practice that you may go to and also what state you may go to. I don't think it is accepted at every state, but I know in Massachusetts, for example, some are. So you want to be careful. I am
you saw
personally,
sorry, you saw Trump did that executive order on the thing recently, like randomly, like a couple months ago. Did you see that?
well, so I actually just came back from a trauma conference,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some not so pleasant a few items I noticed, and but again, we all have our opinions and experiences, and there's all these new products too, like neurofeedbacks that some organizations are starting to use, but a lot of that is like, you've seen those studies done where you wear this hat. It looks funny, but it basically goes on your brain, and then the computer sends different signals, different frequencies to trigger parts of the brain that are not activated or too activated,
Mm-hmm.
trying to calm it down based on whatever you may need. Um, Also, it shuts off some of the senses as well. But there's also some facilities now in Massachusetts that have started using, I'm not going to name them because there's actually quite a few. You can actually, under a provider, they could give you, there's certain medications that you can eat and drink, and then you sit on a chair and you basically hallucinating, and they guide you through that hallucination. And it's supposed to activate the brain, or if you are in deep depression or have specific issues mentally in life, it's supposed to kind of remove, like if you have extreme triggers, it's supposed to kind of reset it. um, it's fairly new, so we don't have like very specific studies on how well it works, but some people report it works very well. Some people tend to abuse it because they feel great when they take it and they're there, and it's like, whoa, I'm in a whole other world, and they don't feel physical pain. So I have very mixed feelings when it comes to that, and I would have to. I don't specialize in it, so I definitely, it's an area that I'd like to learn more before I speak on it. but I have seen it. I've seen facilities use that those products, and I don't know. I'm a person. I'm a type of person that likes to live more so naturally with, and then but also learn the tools without needing medications to treat me. Like you see, for example, I think it's great for individuals to start taking depression medications if they've been in that state for a long period of time and they're struggling in life and it's really impacting their day to day life. But then your body gets addicted to it, right? You have to understand that your body produces certain amounts of, let's say, like your brain produces its own neurofeedback information, and like you talked about the transmitters, and we can talk about other parts as well. We can get into, I don't know how much you want to talk about the brain portion of it, but there's just so many options in our world. I feel like, just if you're going to try it, I would say find actual, real studies, because an article may be published, it does not make it true. It does not make the information valuable. So make sure that a study has fully been completed by, let's say, a university usually, or a big organization. I just look like I said, I just came back from a trauma conference a couple weeks ago, and it was very disturbing to see a really large study that was completed nationally. And I was kind of very bothered by the results because they didn't fully disclose the full results. And this is a trauma conference, right? You're advising all these therapists, psychologists, MDs, and the results, but then you're not fully disclosing the full details that you really need to, not just parts of it. Um, so be careful what you read and what information you accept. Do your own research. We're still lacking a ton of research in this space, and then the other problem is some research may exist, but you just don't have access to it, right? You need to have substantial amount of paid subscription to be able to read and see the full details. So that's like another whole problem we face here in our country, because we can't really, again, see those full data to fully understand what it is, the results.
Yeah, no, I know. So true. It's amazing all the different changes that are going on, but it is actually legal now. Most, I think, and then Trump passed that executive order, so it's kind of like decriminalized in some respects for psilocybin at least. But there's a bunch of like, the ketamine clinics are like all over the place now, especially like California. I mean, even here in Austin,
Mm-hmm.
this lady, she'll be on the podcast soon. She does actually she does couples therapy, and I don't think she administers the ketamine stuff, but she does legally somehow administer MDMA, like ecstasy, with couples therapy,
Mm,
which I was like, wow, I've never heard that before. um,
yeah.
that's
Wow.
an extreme thing, but it does, I can see how, it can, it's been, and actually I've read some articles, it can be very helpful, as it increases the oxytocin levels significantly in people and kind of builds up like that understanding. But no,
Mm,
I would say, just from my personal experiences, I would, yeah, you got to be careful. You got to do your research, but there is some application in, I think, if you can't resolve it naturally, it's a place to explore carefully with the right guidance. Um, and it
mm-hmm.
does have some application in some situations, but it's definitely not for
Mm-hmm.
everybody. But it is, again, something that I would say, as far as like, psilocybin is concerned, it is a natural, and I think in general, it actually has been proven more effective than like Prozac and all these other types of things on like a very, very low dose level. So like you could actually be administering psilocybin on like a daily basis, that's such a tiny amount that you don't have any clue that you have psilocybin in your system. You're 100%, like you would not notice it at all, but it still has, can help regulate the nervous system, activate, neurotransmitters, reduce, anxiety. And it's kind of like a natural, alternative versus, just sticking with all the big pharma companies pushing down all these pharma drugs. And like, yeah, it's the whole
Mhm.
medical system is just absolutely hideous. Like I just appalled with all the stuff that happens with, the avoidance of like natural healing. I mean, that's why I came up with my pillow, which was like I was gonna have to get surgery and then, you know, do all this invasive type things and take the doctors just prescribe you all these most powerful pain medications. It's just, and it still was pain. I still had a pinched nerve in my neck, and I didn't help at all because it was a pinched nerve in my neck. And like, it doesn't matter how much pain medication you take, it's still going to feel it. You're going to feel it, and then
Mhm.
basically take this, do this procedure. But a lot of times, that's not like 90% of the time, I would say, or 80% of the time, there may be a better alternative, such as, just natural healing, whether it's like mental or physical. Like for me, it was just positioning my body in a certain way to provide 100% like zero tension on my neck, free float the cervical spine, decompress the spine to allow inflammation to go down. And that allowed my disc to heal and rehydrate naturally. And I didn't have to get surgery for my particular situation. And it's helped like so countless people with so many different things naturally. So, I mean, yeah, you can, I think basically my point is whether it's, like what you're saying, I think you're 100% correct, is just that there's so many different things you can do naturally that before you go into
Mhm.
anything invasive, whether it's like,
Yeah.
alternative medicine, regular medicine, procedures or whatever. It's like,
Mhm.
you know, what let's like weed out the natural, therapies and treatments and see if those work.
Yeah. Well, our body was designed to do its job, to keep us healthy, right? Be able to process information, be able to live healthy, right? It knows what it needs to do. But when we, right, whether it's our thoughts or whether it's whatever we eat and drink, when we don't give it what it needs to function as normal as possible, then it cannot do its job. For example, if you don't go to bed to sleep at a particular time, your body cannot restore what it needs to, so that when you wake up in the morning, you feel refreshed and like you've had a great night's sleep. So that can be a trigger to your nervous system, to your body, right? And you not feeling healthy. But then, sleep, it's so important, right? To ensure that you fully are getting enough sleep. And if you're waking up too tired, you need to kind of take a look at why is it that you're waking up tired, because you should be waking up fully refreshed and feeling good. So maybe your body's lacking something and it cannot function what it should be. Like for melatonin, for example, many people these days are taking melatonin to fall asleep. So if you're giving your body melatonin, how are you expecting your body to produce that? Right? You're already giving it to it. So it thinks, I don't have to work as hard because it's already here. So, and then you stop taking it and you can't fall asleep. So you go back on it, right? You think about it. Same thing with other parts, right? Let's say you're eating all these processed foods and you feel gross, and you may not feel it. The thing about the body is it takes a while for you to really feel it, sometimes years. And you may be eating and thinking, oh, I'm fine. I'm eating all these unhealthy processed foods. I'm drinking all this beer and I'm smoking. And then, boom, a few years from there, you start to really feel it everywhere. And you have so many health complications. And you start thinking, holy crap, I should have done something different. But now it's a bit too late because now you have so many issues you're trying to fix. If you just did a few things earlier in your years, you'd be in a different space. We don't think about these things, right? Until we really feel the pain. That pushes us to make a difference in our lives. And we don't do anything or that much. We don't catch our negative thoughts or negative living until we start feeling depressed. And then, oh my God, it's too late. I feel so depressed. Something is wrong. But you didn't feel the fact that, I don't know, a particular project or individual or living something in your environment was throwing you off. And now it's, not too late. You can still do something about it, but it's going to take you much longer to heal. So you have to think about these things, right? Small little things every day can make a huge impact.
That's definitely underestimated. I mean, so you can't, yeah, underestimate just like taking that proactive approach. And I mean, I've been there. I mean, I know like where I've had to deal with different things, whether it's like I had like this neck issue, I had this like lower back pain issue, and it was like you go to the doctors and they say they want to do like some like again they were like, let's do an ablation surgery to like zap all the nerves in your lower back, and then they spend a bunch of money on stem cell stuff, PRP, and all this other stuff. It didn't work at all. And it was like the stupidest thing, though. It was just like I just needed, to do some certain stretches that I discovered on my own to like basically crack my own back and then just get chiropractic adjustments. And what was going on the whole time was like my C1 or C2 was kind of like not aligned. And it was like just because I think it was from an injury, but it was like, it took me, like 10, 20 minutes to get out of bed, for a long time because it was in so much pain. And now it just, now I'm 100% better. I do the stretches, I do yoga, but until that pain gets so much, you're like, yeah, you just kind of avoid it. But the sooner you can kind of tackle, okay, what's the root cause? Like, why am I, having this thought, or why am I in this type of pain? And like, what can I do about it? Then I guess, yeah, like I would say just the sooner that you can kind of make that proactive move to kind of improve the situation, yeah, the better you're going
It
to
could
be.
prevent a lot for your future.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I mean, so just a thought alone could make a huge difference in your life. And I'll give you an example. When I was going through so much pain in my life, I didn't realize how much it was impacting me physically. While I didn't realize that I was feeling pain physically, but there was a point in my life where I was having a hard time swallowing food. And I thought something was really wrong. I was thinking the worst. And I had gone through so many different specialists trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And then it hit me. Like, wow, okay, I realized that all those issues were from muscles, for example, right? I was having negative thought based on the past trauma, right? That trauma event that caused the trauma to continue. And every time I had that thought, or something happened that was similar to it, or maybe that individual continuously tried to contact me, it traumatized me. So by myself having that thought, it caused muscle tension here around my neck and then on my shoulders, right? And that created misbalance on my head and my jaw. So, and then my muscles were as you swallow, right? The food and the water. And so that gave me extreme difficulty in swallowing food. And all I really had to do was, I was recommended I take medication, which I've always been against. Like, nope, there's got to be something else. Then I discovered that, okay, I'm going to go to physical therapy and see what's wrong with my neck, because I kept feeling that something is muscle related, even though all these specialists were trying to get me, one of them tried to get me into a procedure, which I said, no way am I going through that. I'm not going through anesthesia, which can trigger a lot in your immune system. So I decided to go through physical therapy, and what a difference it made. A huge difference. So my thought really tightened my muscles, which then caused all these other physical symptoms where I couldn't even swallow food. Just think about how crazy that is. Just my thoughts alone cause me physical pain, right? The kind of like a disability where I can't swallow food. And there was nothing medically wrong besides all I needed to do was relax my mind, relax my muscles. As soon as my mind was clear and, feeling good, my muscles were not as tense and I could swallow food again.
Yeah, no, it kind of goes back to what you were saying with like frequencies as well. It's like you have a thought, which is a frequency, and then sometimes that
Mm-hmm.
frequency is just not the right frequency you need to be on for the whole rest of the day. So it's like, okay, you know, you can reset that and literally not all the time, but it could be like 90 seconds of just like
Mm-hmm.
let it play itself out, let the frequency play itself out, and then allow you to reset to a normal, better, healthier frequency and
Right.
thought that can kind of change everything mentally, physically. Yeah, it's amazing how much that, you know, how much, yeah, physical pain and discomfort can be caused just through chronic, thoughts that are just wreaking havoc on your body, and like just
Mm-hmm.
lingering on those frequencies and those thoughts that are just undermining, you know,
Yeah.
you, so um,
Your thoughts are who you are, right?
yeah.
Tell me your thoughts and I'll tell you, right, who you are, what how you are, how you live your life, basically.
Hmm.
So, but that's something that we struggle and it's not so easy to, right? If you ask someone, what were you thinking about today? What kind of thoughts were you having? Right? Um, they won't be able to tell you because it's so scary to think about all your thoughts. Like you basically just think about it for a moment. You're getting inside your brain, your head, to think about what you're thinking about. Just think about it for a moment. It can feel very scary because you're thinking about every possible problem on the planet in your life, but not about what's in here. Why am I thinking what that guy is thinking about me? Why do I care that I may have too much my hair sticking up? Why, like that's a stress response. Oh my god, my hair is sticking up so much. Everybody must think I'm horrible. Right? And it doesn't matter what kind of thought you're having, is that how it's affecting you. So you kind of think about if you can catch yourself in understanding what's going on in your day to day, like what kind of thoughts are you having in majority of your day? Are they positive? Are they negative? Are they more worries? Are they more what, you're worried about what people thinking about you? Or that are you worried that you haven't accomplished much in life? Are you worried about, that you may not feel as healthy or you're not traveling or you don't have a great relationships, you have bad patterns in relationships or bad habits and I don't know, whatever. If you just start thinking about some of these things, you start falling more into place and realizing who you really are, right? A lot of people have mental addictions that I mentioned earlier. You may be addicted to always being the victim. And it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. You always feel like everybody's after you. And, nobody's ever sees you for who you are. And I'm always right and everybody's always wrong. Or you may be addicted to drama. A lot of people are addicted to drama. We don't realize that. And when there is no drama, we feel like something is wrong. We have to either create drama or go somewhere where there is some. So you really seriously think about, right? And you think about relationship patterns, right? You may be dating similar people with similar issues that don't treat you well. They don't care about you. That hurt you. And you have to think about why is that happening? Not that something is wrong with you, but it's the way you're processing information or the way you may not care about yourself, you may not value yourself, or you may have been abused as a child. I mean, there's a lot of indications, once you understand who you really are in your day to day. And your day tells you a lot about you. So start with your thoughts.
Yeah, well said. So Nora, thanks so much for joining us today. How can the viewers and listeners find out more about you, and what do you, I know you have some coaching programs. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. I have quite a few coaching programs, life coaching, depending where you are in life, what your biggest struggles are. I always recommend to at least get a full life assessment so you get an entire picture of your life. And then you get to decide, okay, is this something I can do on my own, or is it something I need to work with someone who specializes in it? I look at the entirety of the life, as I mentioned, because that is very valuable as opposed to let's just work on nutrition and forget about what the brain thinks, right? You need to do a combination of quite a few things because, just nutrition doesn't make up who you are. So yes, I do one-on-one group coaching. And then I do have a self development online program that you can work with it as you go, at your own pace. I have published as well. So if you have kids, for example, I published 5 books, 2 adults and 3 for kids. I've actually published them with my kids, co-authored with my kids. And they're all focused on mental health, self development, emotional regulation. And then very soon I'll be publishing my full life assessment so you can just download and actually do it on your own, and try and figure things out on your own depending on financial situation. But the best way to contact me is through my website, which is noraoliver.com. A ton of information there. If you need more, you just schedule a free session and we can go in more depth.
Amazing. Yeah, that was very helpful. I'm sure everyone got a lot out of that. The description or the links and everything will be in the description if you want to check out Nora. And it does sound very interesting to get that, whole life evaluation kind of thing and identify, just
Mm-hmm.
different trigger points in your life. I never even heard that concept before, to be honest. And it is like,
Yeah.
yeah, really a different way of looking at it, and makes a lot of sense to me to, take that
Yeah.
approach like
We
what
don't
you're
even
what you're
think.
doing. Um,
Yeah, thank you.
mhm.
These are some of the areas that we never even think about. We go majority of our life. And even I have a 96-year-old client who went through her entire life, and now finally she wants to do something about her life. She lived a pretty miserable life. She had few kids, and it's never too late. Where I'm trying to get to is it's never too late. Does not matter how old you are or what gender you are, or what culture you have, what religion you have. The thing is, we're all humans. We all eat and drink and breathe. And so I highly recommend just give yourself a full life assessment so you understand yourself. Okay? Start with that.
Mhm.
That's all I have to say. Start with that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And until next time, we'll see you. And if you, again, want to check out Nora, just check out the links in the description. And we'll see you on the next one.